Hello and welcome back to another episode of Power Rangers Lore. Today we'll be discussing the story of Zeltrax, a ruthless cyborg out for vengeance against Tommy Oliver, who he believes is the cause for all his woes. Though in truth, I believe it is all a manipulative ploy by Mesogog, who wants to return everything back to the age of the dinosaurs. I don't know, let's find out. What do you guys think? Zeltrax, a cyborg with the theme of an ammonite. What is an ammonite, though? Well, the first time you see him, Zeltrax is not what you expect from a general of a creature that is trying to turn back time to that of the dinosaurs. Now, you see this cyborg creature that is once human, but at no point did I ever look at him and go, yes, he's definitely ammonite themed. And yet, he is in the what you would call back to the notes put out there. What is an ammonite, though? Well, ammonites are those fossils that you find all over the place of the shells that are wrapped around in spiral-like arcs of these ancient creatures that were long ago, during the time of the dinosaurs and way before then. Ammonites are essentially like squids or things encased of hard shells, and so that is what Zeltrax has become, a creature or a human being encased in a hard shell. Now, he is the arch enemy of Dr. Tommy Oliver for many reasons, but we have to go in the past to really figure out the reason why. Zeltrax was once a regular human named Terrence Smith, or also known as Smitty. He was an orphan and former partner of Tommy Oliver and Anton Mercer. The three worked together for several different years, and they took a picture of their first day together. Exactly what they were digging up, not exactly certain, but it had to do with fossil remains of some type of dinosaur. Now, some point later on in their life, probably several years after this, Tommy and Smitty had become a little bit of a rivalry between the two. Tommy didn't think too much of it, but apparently it hit harder for Smitty. They were both looking after the same job in Anton Mercer's Industries, a new kind of overseer position for the new island project that Anton and, well, Tommy were going to work together on in the future. Now, eventually Tommy would get chosen over Smitty by Mercer himself, and as a result, Smitty would leave abruptly, breaking off all contact and all friendship with the two, or so it is believed. Smitty would go work on a much more dangerous job, supposedly, and that was the last time that Tommy ever heard from him on that. Now, there were, at this different job at a different company, he was working on different chemicals and explosives of sorts, or so it was said. Now, he was mixing this unknown element that would cause this massive explosion at his lab. Now, I don't believe that was actually his doing, because he's some kind of a specialist, and it would not be the reason why he caused his own detonation of sorts. Because soon after, Mesogog found his ruined body and rebuilt him with cybernetic technology, putting him and encasing him forever in the black armored cyborg body that would later be known as Zeltrax. I believe it was Mesogog who found him because he caused the entire explosion to happen to begin with. He put those unstable chemicals there, or caused his entire experiment to go awry, and led to this entire accident, killing Terrence Smith once and for all, and giving birth and rise to Zeltrax, the cyborg, with a vengeance. For a few years, he would hide out on an island owned by Anton Mercer and later on Mesogog himself, where they would rebuild their entire base and forces of darkness, their Tyrannodrons, and so much more. Their plans to dominate the planet and turn it back to the time of the dinosaurs. Now, Zeltrax probably was too overcome with vengeance and blame everything in his life on none other than Tommy Oliver, who had escaped the explosion island, who had escaped the explosion and the repercussions of what he did to Terrence and leaving his friend behind, who had gone so much farther in his life than anything Terrence could accomplish, and it was all because he had taken the position that was rightfully, supposedly, Terrence's. Or at least that's what Mesogod fed into his brain. It's not exactly certain for exactly what happened, because it was described as Terrence as a nice and delightful human being who was full of kindness. Now, we find out that Zeltrax is not that at all, but a ruthless, monstrous, cold-hearted creature with no sense of shame when it came down to attacking anything that had to do with Tommy Oliver. And for many years, Zeltrax served Mesogog faithfully and loyally, until the day when they got a new lackey, Elsa, and he started to get a rivalry with this one, just like he did with Tommy. And he quickly could see he was beginning to transfer, though he had kind of a flirtation going on with her at times. Kind of like an office romance gone awry. Though she never took it any further, and he never got any further itself, you could tell he was looking for human companionship of some sort. He was not fully accustomed to his cybernetics entirely. Now, that's when the Rangers Connor McKnight, Ethan James, and Kira Ford would recover the Dino Gems and become the Dino Thunder Power Rangers. Now, as time would go on, the three would go and lead many different crusades against the forces of darkness and push back any of their amalgamations of evil that they would send out there. All these twisted creatures would be defeated as time goes on. Zeltrax would make himself known to Tommy Oliver and said he would get his vengeance against him and would finally get everything against his rival. Tommy would not know what he meant by getting against his rival, and it would really stump him for a long time, though Zeltrax knew exactly what he was talking about, and he just didn't understand how Tommy just didn't know who he was. He should always know. If he was such a good friend in the past, it only goes to prove that he wasn't a friend at all. Now, many times, Zeltrax would go to battle against the Rangers as well as Tommy Oliver, who would eventually gain his own Ranger form as the Black Brachio Ranger. Now, time would go on, and he would constantly be defeated and sent back to his master with his tail between his legs, fueling more of Zeltrax's rage, but also feeling his own pain as Mesogog took out his frustrations on his failure of a general over and over and over again. Not just on him, but also on Elsa himself. Now, eventually time would go on, and Tommy would ask the question in a final battle. Well, one of the many, quote, final battles between himself and Zeltrax. Just exactly who was he and why did he hate him so much? Well, it is revealed. He goes, "Do you know the name Terrence Smith?" And that stuns Tommy for a long time. He looks at him and goes, "Wait a second, Smitty?" And immediately, Zeltrax takes the time and effort and attacks him repeatedly, doing immense amounts of damage over and over again to his armor and nearly defeating Tommy once and for all. He reveals that he is the cause of all his pain and suffering, that he was the one who was about to come through a breakthrough and get back everything that was rightfully his, and believes that Tommy was always the reason why he was in this entire position. However, Tommy doesn't believe that at all, and believes that he is tricked in some fashion by Mesogog. Tommy even tells him that, well, revenge is never the answer. But Zeltrax replies, "It is the only thing that's kept me going." Tommy would try to stop him several different times in that same battle, but in the end realized that he had no other choice and attempted to destroy Zeltrax, though Zeltrax would survive for another battle. Now, Zeltrax would try to get an upgrade in his own powers, and decided to look at the Geno Randomizer, and goes, what if I did it to myself? We've done it already to create monsters. What if we used it to empower them? And he tries to empower him on himself entirely. Instead of upgrading Zeltrax, though, the machine creates a super-powered clone of him called Goldenrod, that Zeltrax believes, he's convinced him into believing at least, his father. Yes, Goldenrod believes that Zeltrax is his father. Now, Zeltrax keeps going with this and goes, yes, I am your father and you are my son, and it's our family destiny to destroy Tommy Oliver. Now, Goldenrod eventually goes after Tommy, but when the other Dino Rangers arrive, Zeltrax appears to rescue Goldenrod, as the odds were against him the entire time with being outnumbered, and the skills alone of Tommy Oliver. After using the Geno Randomizer on his son once more and creating it even stronger than before, Zeltrax and Goron attack Tommy again. Trent and Ethan, the next day, also have to deal battle with this and are kind of all dealt with a hammer blow. When all 4 Dino Rangers morph up, well, things get a little interesting. Goldenrod and some of the Tyrannodrones commanded by Zeltrax attack them, while Zeltrax takes on Tommy all by himself. His son eventually grows giant and attacks the city as the Thundersaurus Megazord is formed to fight him. Zeltrax is then beaten by Tommy while his son beats the Megazord. Unfortunately, though, because Tommy is an overpowered god, he ends up destroying Zeltrax's son with the power of his Brachiostaff, while Zeltrax is forced to watch and devastated by the loss of his only family and vows vengeance on Tommy once again. One of those many things that just leads up to a burning hatred further and further more against that of Tommy Oliver. It would be Zeltrax who would be able to use the cloning technology to clone a White Ranger, or an evil White Ranger. He would also believe that this clone would look to Zeltrax as his father figure of sorts, and would serve and watch die repeatedly against the forces of darkness. Against the forces of good. The darkness doesn't really care too much, except for Zeltrax does see a quite shame in the fact that he keeps losing these different type of sons as time goes on. After a near fatal experience that was nearly caused by his own master's plan, Zeltrax mutinies against Mesogog, going, "You're the one holding me back. All your plans are the one reason that Tommy Oliver is still alive," and goes out on his own. He later gains superpowered through his special underground spring that flows between the Tree of Life. However, he's defeated once and for all, well, it's believed once and for all, by Connor McKnight, who kind of fights for his girlfriend's new tree of sorts. White Ranger, the evil clone of the White Ranger, would appear eventually to him and try to convince Zeltrax to come back to the side of Mesogog. Now the two would fight after this, realizing that Zeltrax is not going to come back at all, and they would eventually get their attacks broken up and lead to nowhere. Now Zeltrax would lead in his army of Tyrannodrons against the city once more, but would encounter the Dino Rangers. However, before they could do actual battle, he is teleported by a beam from the ship known as the Terra spacecraft, and meets none other than Emperor Grum, who has come from the future, 2025, to conquer Earth before the SPD is formed, and he has no further issues of dealing with that type of threat. Now, the two fight really quickly, but quickly realizing that Grum is stronger, Zeltrax agrees to work with him to defeat the Rangers once and for all. Back on Earth, Zeltrax finds Tommy and fights him once again, and is about to beat him until B Squad, or the SPD Rangers of B Squad, along with Doggy Kruger, arrive and save Tommy Oliver, which further infuriates Zeltrax himself. With all 12 Rangers now appearing, Zeltrax and his allies are attacked and outnumbered and outgunned, and are easily beaten before he's forced to flee once more. Now, in a last-ditch gambit near the end of the series, Zeltrax sees his opportunity and kidnaps Elsa, who has been returned back to human form after failing her master one too many times and needing her cybernetic enhancements to empower himself. He invades the Rangers' base, and then, with the aid of the Triptoids, his little minions of his own, Zeltrax builds his giant Zeldzord, where he uses Elsa as a hostage inside the Zord itself. So basically telling the Rangers, if you attack me, you're likely to hurt her, just as likely you're likely to hurt me. However, they're able to rescue Elsa just in time before, well, the Zeldzord obliterates itself, and the Rangers are able to defeat him once and for all. Now, he does escape just barely in his weakened state, but he's easily killed in a good old-fashioned duel with the attack of none other than Tommy's Brachiostaff and Kira's Pariah grips. I can never pronounce her name of her grips right. That silent P always gets me. Zeltrax drops his weapons, falls back, and explodes in a massive shockwave, leading his vengeance down to nothing. That is the end of Zeltrax. I believe that he didn't get quite the story that he needed to be told in his true storyline. I felt that if we got more into his own, he had like a pain engine or a something playing in his head constantly that reminded him of Tommy being responsible for all his issues in his life, would have been more of a greater storyline of why you could feel like for him. Even Elsa, we didn't get too much from the storyline here, and I didn't really see why, Zeltrax even hated Tommy so much. He just had this deep chip on his shoulder about something that really turned into something more. Now, you could say that Terrence Smith was dead, being turned into this monstrous creature that was far opposite from a harmless, kind, and polite man to a brutal, cold killing machine. He was obsessed with hatred towards Tommy, though he still could see that in them. He was stubborn, and he was still arrogant, and still a human deep down. Despite his negative sides, he was still a noble and honorable fighter, though lacking the honor and pity towards a ranger he did have towards other type of heroes throughout that you've seen there. He was still faithful to Mesogog and loved him as a father, but he also saw him as a monster later on, able to grow and see him that he's just being used and going to be thrown out like next week's trash. Now, he also had great pity for his old enemy, an old friend, and thought he could be saved, but in the end, he could not be saved. He was too full of vengeance, and you know what? Even that soul that he still possessed wasn't enough to save him. Maybe if he did have his son, Goldenrod, he may be still able to grow further than that. He could have gone on beyond there. Maybe he could have seen something more. Maybe his son could have said, "What is the need for all this pain, Dad?" But he never got to see it. All he kept seeing was Tommy killing all of his work over and over and over again. That is the story of Zeltrax, the poor, poor man who became a twisted, robotic creature of evil, all because he held a chip on his shoulder and was manipulated by a creature from bygone era. Be sure to turn in next time for another story of Power Rangers lore. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did not, go feel free to comment in the comments down below. If you did, thank you for sharing, and make sure to comment in the comments down below either way. Have a good one, guys, and may the power protect you always.